Hi there, and welcome to another episode of True Talks with Jess, where we discuss the real behind the real, the things that are happening in real life of superheroes behind the real, the Instagram reel, the Facebook reel, the Snapchat filters, and in real life. This week's guest is.
Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of True Talks with Jess, the real behind the real. Today I am so excited to have Kadesha Mitchell here with us. Kadesha is an active young adult who's battled with depression as an adolescent and in her early youth and adult years. She now strives to advocate for youth and young adults against the stigma in mental health and be a support and mentor to those both in her community and church. She's currently pursuing her bachelor's in social work and hopes to work as a case manager or mental health counselor. I invited Kadesha on because we have a personal back end story. Kadesha's dad was one of my husband's really people he looked up to, was very, very influential to him in the church. And I remember we were on vacation in St. Louis when he got the call that your dad had passed. And it was the first time I'd seen my husband lose it. We were at his mom's house and he literally just sat and fell in my lap and just bawled for 2 hours and completely absolutely lost it. And I know, as being a person who's very involved with young adults in my church and who's been in church now for 15 years, we often become so spiritual we're no earthly good. We don't allow ourselves to really go through the process of being human and to heal. So I really wanted to talk to you today about your journey, particularly as it relates to kind of your bounce back and the resilience as it related to losing your dad and still kind of being in church with that kind of hurt and unresolved stuff. And what could somebody who's experiencing grief kind of expect to go through?
Yeah, totally. So first, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here, um, and just be talking about this because it's still strongly stigmatized. People are still really afraid, to just say the word depression and not get weird eyes at them. And even though this is a society where it is a thing, it is something that people struggle with on a daily basis. And not to say that you have to. There's ways to learn how to cope with it, how to get through your days, and not make it that heavy weight on your shoulder, or that labelizes you as, hey, I'm depressed. So it's definitely something that I advocate for and I love talking about. It's kind of strange to say it that way, but it's something that um, I feel like um, just doesn't get talked enough about, of how not to carry it out on your shoulders, how not to make that your front face. You can go through it and get through it. It's kind of my motto. And that's where I was, being 13 and losing my dad in such a traumatic way, and just how it all happened. Regular Sunday morning turns into a not so regular Sunday morning anymore. um, Going to wake someone up and there being no life there. So it came, that was my trauma. So I have that grief, and then I've got that trauma associated with it. So coming to terms with that's what I was going through, and even in ways noticing I was a little bit depressed before losing him, but I think it just opened up a door and was just like, whoa, I'm actually dealing with this. And also coming to a place to find that it was okay to talk about it, and not just to sweep under the rug, and not to just, it's definitely you have to pray about it. You have to stay prayed up on it. But you also need to know, how do I cope with it when it comes? Because, at 13, I may not have understood, how do I receive what God's saying to me? Do I know that's him talking to me? Is it me he's talking to me? What's happening? How do I handle all of those emotions from going from seeing my dad every single day to him not being there? And then going from, I would say this, 13 to 21 within a matter of 6 months. Going from making sure my mom is okay, and I don't even care about me because it's my mom. I know she's dealing with it. And just going through the motions is really all I was doing. I was going through the motions. Um, I had missed church and school for 2 to 3 weeks. I wasn't going. I wasn't ready. I'd have panic attacks going back to school. Um, I'd always have to go home because my mom was struggling and having panic attacks. So it was I need to be there for her. And I don't regret that. I don't regret going through those situations, because I definitely needed to go through it to understand myself and understand my mind, because it was in a really dark place. I was very lost. I struggled with codependency, suicidal ideations, self-harm, and just I was ready. I'm like, I don't want this life anymore. I don't want to live like this. It'd be better if I didn't feel any pain, which in reality, um, suicide is not a solution. It's a permanent solution to a temporary situation. And that's what I think bounced me back. And like having, the spiritual guidance in my life. The Glasses were my youth pastors at the time, and they are amazing people. I love them. I still call Sister Glass Marjorie to this day. Um, getting me out of that dark spot, literally just taking me out of the house, coming to my house and pulling me out. Making sure that, you do need prayer. Like you need to be praying about it, but also learn, how do I cope with it? So it always goes back. It's a twofold thing. I need to learn, how do I cope with it? What do I do when I'm not wanting to get out of bed? What do I do when I just want to hurt myself because that's the only release of pain I'm going to feel? So there's that other aspect that in this society we forget about, and especially within the church. Yeah, I need to be prayed up, but also teach me, how do I handle it? How do I deal with it when I'm in the midst of a situation? At 13, I didn't know what I was thinking was suicide. I didn't know that. I didn't know the term to it. I didn't know the dark days I was feeling when I just wanted to sleep, and I took as many Benadryls as I could just to sleep it off. I didn't realize that was depression. I didn't know that's what that was. I didn't know the word to it. I just knew I had to get out of it. And I know at a camp, I think we were still at the Virginia District camp, and that was really when I felt that that bounce back, that I can do this. I don't have to walk around with this cloud. I don't have to walk around with this. My life is not better gone. It's not, I don't have to wake up every day with this weight on me. But then I also learned how to handle that. And it to me, it took talking to people. It took letting people know how I'm feeling and not holding it all in. Because I feel like that's where a lot of that extra weight when it comes to depression, that extra sadness, that extra, like, I just want to be by myself, that isolation comes from, I don't want to put that burden on anybody else because someone else is going through something. So why would I do that to someone? And it took me, I want to say, like 4 years before I ever told my family like what I went through. And I laid it all out. I was like, I was depressed. I was suicidal. I was self-harming, and with people around the corner when I was doing it. So it took the moment I feel like I was honest with myself that I was dealing with it and that it was something real, was when I got that bounce back. But that didn't mean that it stopped there either. As I got older and that codependency got worse, and the instances of depression would just pop up, my health was going downhill. Self-esteem was horrible. So it's not kind of those one and done things. It's something that's going to constantly creep back up. But I have learned coping skills. I've learned how to be honest when I'm in that place. Um, I've learned that it's, if someone's pointing something out about you and you trust their opinion, to take it. Because I got to a place where I didn't realize that that's where I was. I got to a place where I would go months in depression and not realize that's what it was, because it became a norm, because I let it become me. I let it define me. And people were like, I think you're kind of getting an eating disorder. Well, that's not true. It's not happening. I think you're kind of getting that dark cloud back. And oh, I'm fine. It's always fine. And I'd pile work on top of school, on top of ministry, on top. So I'm putting all these things to cover up what I don't want anybody else to see, because I'm a youth leader. I work with kids. I can't be going through this again. But it's real. It's out there. We're humans. It happens. And I think it's time for us to get off that stigma. Stop stigmatizing ourselves, because I stigmatize my own self, and just realize that it is something that needs to be faced and like taken care of. And it is something you can recover from. You just have to know your triggers. You got to know, who can I find in my life that's not afraid to tell me, hey, I noticed this. Because again, I know I'm a very visual person, so sometimes I'll just do things and I won't know that that's what's happening. So it takes that happening to be like, I need this. So I needed those voices in my life. I needed those people. I needed God to put those people in my life for me to do that and show me that it doesn't have to be a label. It doesn't have to be, hello, my name is depressed. Hello, my name is eating disorder. Hello, it doesn't have to be a label. It can be something you struggle with, but it doesn't have to be who you are. It doesn't have to be the definition of you. And just realizing that when it comes, to face that cloud, face the storm, and push through. I never want anyone, and I think for a while I never want anyone to think that I'm like this like miraculously healed. It just happened one day. No, I'm still working on me. But I don't claim that. I don't let that control my life. If I have a dark day, I'm going to talk to someone about it, and I'm going to pray about it, and I'm going to use I have a wellness toolbox. I have a physical wellness toolbox. I love RAP. You guys have never heard of that, Wellness Recovery Action Plan. I love that. I use that. That's what I use, those things. So I've put all the things together.
Like, what is codependency? What is the coping skill?
Oh, yeah.
What is RAP? What are those things for those who don't know?
So RAP is a wellness recovery action plan, and it literally can be used for anything. Shopping addiction, any addiction, substance abuse recovery. So anything like that, depression. And in this plan, when you have a RAP, in that plan, you're going to point out the things that trigger you.
What's a trigger?
So I'll put, for example, for me, a trigger for me is Father's Day. That brings up, I've handled a little bit better, but it triggers that emotion of losing my dad again. So that's really what a trigger is. A scent, a store, a sign. There's so many little things. Fabric for some people is a trigger that brings back that emotion of that trauma, or that urge to want to drink again, or that urge to binge on something. So in your RAP, you're going to put what your triggers are, literally from A to Z. Like I just said, simplest, from fabric to the smell of fresh wood. Those kind of things are triggers. So in that RAP, you're going to indicate your triggers, and then you're going to indicate your wellness tools. What do I need if I am triggered, or if I'm feeling like I'm in a place of crisis, or I'm losing my wellness? What can I do? And one thing for me is reorganizing. I know sometimes when I'm in a rut, or if that I'm getting back into a dark space, if I'm disorganized, if everything's all over the place, if I'm rushed, if there's no slowdown time, to me that's a trigger, and that's a sign. And I use my wellness toolbox, and I'll stop. I'll get all my colored pencils out, and I'll write out my agenda. Like, I'll organize myself again, and then I feel like I can start over. So all of those things are included in your RAP, and then you'll put any therapists or counselors or family members. If you are in a crisis and you need someone, those contacts can be made. So it just walks you through different points of your life and describes, what do you feel like when you're well? And you have to put that in there. What am I like when I'm well? I'm organized. I'm clean. I have more of a resiliency. I'm more patient. Things like that. And then you got to go to the flip side of, what am I like when I'm not well? So all of that goes in there. And they actually now have like travel sizes. I don't have mine with me right now. It's probably like the size of, let's see what I have. This card right here. And it opens up. It's like a little pamphlet, and you can carry that around with you. So if you're ever in a crisis and someone's going through your stuff to figure out, like, who are you? What's your name? They'll find that, and that's in there, and it'll have your most important contacts in there. Or if you have anxiety, so it's a good thing for a lot of different things. So my RAP is particularly to my depression, and it has my family, who to contact, and it also has physicians you don't want to see you. You want to pick the ones that you know are going to help you. If you know that, hey, I went to this person and they did not help me, but I went to this person and they were a huge help, you want to put that in your RAP, so that when you're in a place where you can't make decisions, your decisions have already been made and you're the one who made them. So that's one thing I love about RAP, and just the accessibility, and you can redo it. You can do one for your kids if you have kids. You can do one for your house. So there's so many, it literally is so versatile. And that's why I'm always like, you can recover from things. There's things you can get through. It's just learning how to handle them when you're in them. So that it isn't kind of control you again. And then you asked about codependency. So for me, codependency was really relying on a male in my life because I lost that male figure who was literally like my best friend. So I was very dependent on people and on friends, and I'm an extrovert. So if you ever meet me, like the way I am right now is how I am in person. I am super like, woo. So I'm an extrovert. I've always been told I meet no strangers. So that's just my personality. Um, but that also comes with that codependent side that I'm like always leaning on people. And I've learned better to, I do things by myself. I've gone to basketball games by myself. I've kind of learned how to be me with me by me. And codependency is not all about that. Codependency is like, I need a person. I need someone right now. So, which is not a horrible thing. So like, if you do feel like you're codependent, I don't want to make you think that I'm like, no codependency. It just, for me, was not healthy because of what I'd cling to and the people I'd cling to. And it would push people away because it'd be like, okay, this is a little too much. I don't know how to handle you right now. So for me, it was unhealthy. I was very, very unhealthy with it. So it's just figuring yourself out and not comparing yourself to anybody else's mental health diagnosis because none of us look the same. I don't care what the textbook says. There is a textbook definition, yes, but everyone is absolutely different. You are your own definition of what you're going through, and only you can express what you're going through.
Right.
I've met people who have lost their parents, and they didn't handle it the way that I did. They were kind of like, I dealt with it, and I kept living my life. And the anniversaries, I don't cry over there. Like, so everyone's different. For me, anniversaries are not as bad anymore. They used to be really hard, but I have a really good support system of people who will shoot me a text when they know that it's that day. I thank my support. Like I honestly, without Jesus and my support, I wouldn't have made it. I wouldn't still be here. So yeah.
When you say a coping skill, what do you mean by that? So a lot of the people who are watching this don't necessarily follow me as a therapist.
Okay.
They follow me as kind of
Okay,
just
cool.
talks about like life. So when you say a coping skill, for those who are not therapists or who have not been in therapy, what does that mean? What is that?
So in my aspect of coping skill, it's something that it's a helping tool of how to deal with something, how to deal with your mental health diagnosis, or if you are in depression or grief or crisis trauma, you're dealing with those kind of things. It's something that helps. And some people, literally simple coping skills are breathing techniques, like the square breathing, where it's breathe in for 4, breathe out for 4, hold for 4. All those things. That square breathing. That's a coping skill. When they, like I said, I mentioned those triggers earlier. They smell that smell and it makes them go back to when they had that traumatic instance. Their coping skill is to stop, breathe, and continue. A coping skill for me is talking because I like to talk. So just something that helps you when you are at that point. I don't even want to say breaking point because sometimes you're not at a breaking point when you need a coping skill. It's just you're feeling down. You're feeling like you don't have worth, or you're feeling just you don't know what you're feeling. You want a coping skill for that. You want something to help. How do I get through that feeling? How do I get on the other side of what I'm feeling? And that's how I like to describe a coping skill. It's that bridge to the other side of feeling good. So that's why I say for some people, it literally is just breathing. Some people it's talking. Some people it's going on a walk. Some people it's going to see their therapist or their counselor or their peer support, which I'm all for peer support because I love that. Having peers use what they've gone through, not as a crutch, but to help someone is awesome to me. So, so coping skill is just something that'll help you get to the other side, get through whatever you're going through in that instance. Because like I said, triggers happen instantly. Situations happen very fast. Storms come and go really quickly. And you want something to help you get through it.
Right.
And so for me, it was even journaling is a good coping skill. If you don't journal, get a journal. It's awesome. Even if you just write hello, my name is in there. Sometimes just writing that out, because I can write a lot more than I say. Like I could probably get off of this and be like, Jessica, I had so many other things I wanted to say if I wrote it out.
Right.
So for me, writing or drawing, people use that as coping skills. So just something that helps them cope with the situation. It is that definition. Get through what they're going through. So, I love Music. I'm a music person. That's a coping skill for me. Going to church for me is also a coping skill, because if I am going through something, I know I'm like, I will be the first person at the front seat. And I wasn't always like that, because I didn't want people to know I was going through things. And again, that goes back to, I stigmatized myself. I made myself look like there's only one way, that things can be happening, that it can be handled. So there's so many different, like, I literally could go on. There's so many different coping skills, but like I said, coping skill is that bridge to get to the other side, to get through whatever you're going through, and to ease it. Because sometimes it won't just take the one coping skill. It might take you to do that coping skill a few times before you feel like you're through it, but it just eases what's going on, is how I like to think about it.
Okay, cool. So you talked about how you were praying and like you didn't know if you were hearing from God or because of your age and things like that. So oftentimes, like I hear, and again, guys, I am not bashing. I am a like faithful Christian. I'm very involved in my church. But we'll just hear like pray about it. And we put like very spiritual principles on very practical things. Like sometimes just praying about anxiety or depression or eating disorder, thoughts of hurting myself or thoughts of dying, that does not mitigate or decrease that as an actual thing. Like you have to put steps and things like a rap. And I love the fact that your rap is like literally like a sheet of paper you can just pull out. You've already identified like what helps. So for those that still may not understand, so the rap is literally like a list of paper or like actually a box. So I have an EMDR. People like literally put like their stuff in like a safe place or a container. But the idea is that you have like this wealth of knowledge and access to resources that work. So you can say, hey, when I'm overwhelmed or when I don't want to get out of bed for 3 weeks straight, what can I do to kind of bounce back? And it's not that everything's going to work every single time, but you can say, hey, you know, last time I was really, really sad, maybe I did pray, or maybe I listened to music, maybe I called my therapist. And yes, it's okay to live for God and have a therapist. We don't talk about that. We don't say like, hey, go see a therapist. We'll go to the doctor. My eye doctor has an eye doctor. My heart doctor has a heart doctor. Like, even though like we're professionals and I am a therapist who advocates for therapists to go to therapy, even though we're these professionals, we have this long, extensive education and degree and a background, we still need that help. So like when I think about and when I explain to people the importance of having like somewhere to go, somebody to talk to, it's not always just your friends. So you talk to people who've also support, people who've actually also been in your same, who've walked a day in the struggle that you struggled in, who say, hey, this is how I overcame. Versus your friends who are like, oh, well, you know, it's not that bad. It's just Father's Day. Like tomorrow won't be Father's Day. Get over it. And people can often be very well-intentioned and cause a lot more harm than good. Not because they mean bad, but because the impact of what they said and how you take it versus how they intended it can be two very different things. And I think that as the church and as young people and as people from like Afro-Caribbean cultures, we need to have those conversations like, okay, yes, I went to wake up my dad. He did not wake up. That was traumatic. I get we had like the burial and the funeral and all of that. But now we've got to get rid of like clothing and things that really like make things permanent. And this is no longer a thing. Like, yes, I had a dad and my dad was active and present. And your dad was a pillar in your home church. Like, he was a pillar for my husband, he was a pillar for many people. So like everybody was hurting and nobody was really talking about it. It was kind of like the funeral was over. And I can say that because my husband, and that was right. So that happened. Then you guys lost Stephanie. It was like literally like back-to-back losses for you guys. And it was like, okay, well, this person died. They were buried. And we should just kind of bounce back and not have those conversations. And to watch people that I really care about, like really struggle in those areas, you know, thank goodness Jesse didn't battle with depression. But had he been like literally like completely depressed and at a loss for that, where would he have turned? Who could we have pointed him to? Particularly because there is like a great void in apostolic counselors. So we believe, you know, in one Lord, and we believe in a very clear way of living based on the Bible and these principles. That you go into a counselor's office who's just like, well, you don't really need to pray. You don't really need to. So you get these dual messages, both very, very helpful. Therapist very well intentioned to help, church very well intentioned to help, and you in the middle kind of like, well, my therapist said I need this toolbox, and you know, church is like, well, just pray and fast. So now you're like, am I doing one thing wrong? So even like you said, like you went from being 13 to 21 in 6 months, you know, theoretically, but like that, then like that paradigm shift of, okay, well, my mom is always strong. Now I'm strong for my mom. and I'm now like a caretaker for someone who's always cared for me, and having to then literally view your world like upside down from where you were being taken care of to now you're the caregiver, and then navigating through that. So when you don't want to go to school, well, it's okay. She doesn't want to go to work either, and really like how we struggle through grief after the fact is something that we don't talk about, because it's so common to go through like the cycles of depression and anxiety. And the majority of people who I know who have fallen into like depression and anxiety, they have developed like self-harm, eating disorders as a way to cope, because that gives a voice to your pain. I can now see, so if I cut myself and I bleed, I see how I feel. And the rest of us, we're trying to kill yourself. And I've worked in self-harm for many years, and I worked with people who were like, I can finally see the pain. Like, it finally makes sense. What I've been feeling and I couldn't articulate for all this time, I can see. So it was never the idea of, I want to end my life. I want to end this pain. So maybe hunger is easier than depression. So I'll just be hungry all the time, because that really works. And I think that it's so important as we talk about that, because when people come to therapy, they're like at their wit's end. And what happens is there's all these little small things that happened before they got there. Then they're like, well, if I don't get this fixed right now today, I'm going to fall apart. And the truth of the matter is there's all these little unresolved things. And grief may be one of those little unresolved things that then piles with now grief, and then codependency, and your mom, and the absence of your dad, and these smells, and the somatic issues, like all the things that accompany it. And then you're like, oh, and I see somebody, you have no idea why you're like snapping in Starbucks because they forgot your whipped cream, and you've like completely lost it. You're very off like your regular person. And nobody can, at that point, nobody can tell you, because you're so hurt from not having the access to resources. So I really advocate, and the point of these True Talks is to say, hey, like, where was the point where it'd been like great for somebody to say, hey, Kadesha, you need some help, before you realized it? Because everyone had to have seen a change.
Yeah. I think like it was, I know at one point, my mom considered, I think she mentioned to me like, hey, maybe you should, because I think she could see it, but I think I didn't want to, because I was very like, I don't need that. I don't need that. I'll be fine. Like, God's, and not to, like you said, not to um discredit that, um because I couldn't be here without him, but he also gave us tools to use, and I just didn't know they were there, and I was afraid to use those tools because I didn't think they were going to work. I didn't think I needed them. But working in it now, I'm thankful that different Bible colleges are incorporating like counseling programs, because we need it. Like, those two things need to come together and be merged, so you don't feel like you have to choose one or the other, or make people feel like they have to choose one or the other. In my associate's program, I went for psychology and Christian counseling. I took the two things that I know are most important in my life, and that's understanding my mind and knowing that, like, God is here. He's not leaving my side. But he also gave us people to talk to about those things. He doesn't want us to, keep that in our minds and keep that to ourselves. He wants us to be able to express that. So I think, honestly, if I think back, I think there was a point where my mom, wanted me to go, but I didn't, because I didn't think it was going to work. I didn't think, what is me going to talk to someone going to do? Like, that's not going to help me. And I look back and I'm like, I wish I would have, because there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with going to seek help. And the amount of overwhelming support that I've gotten through sharing about my mental health and talking about that, I wish I would have known that then. Like, I think I thought I would be shunned because I wanted to go to counseling. And it's not an alternative route. I wasn't going to choose counseling over God. Like, that would never be a thing. And I don't want anybody who watches these to think you have to choose one or the other. You don't. He created a heart doctor the same way he created a counselor. Now, if your counselor is like completely like off of it and they don't know what they're talking about, then switch, find someone else. Like, so you don't have to just settle
Again,
when you
so
find
you don't
one.
have to stick with the counselor. So let's say you're like, hey, I'm going to go to Jessica, and you're like, Jessica's not the fit. So you're not just throw your mental health out and say, I'm not going to go.
Yeah. Don't just be like, nope, not doing it. Try again. There's not one shoe fits all. Like, it's like you go and find who works for you. Like, God wants you to be wise. Like, that's the wisest thing you could do. Continue to keep God at the center of your decision, but talk to someone. Go see someone. Don't be afraid of that. And I am so thankful for, the church family that I have, the family that I have. They've been so supportive through all of my situations and everything, and even my career path, my career choice. Um, it's not something that's like, I don't think you should do that. It's, you can help people. It's not to discredit. So don't ever, I feel like that's the thing. We feel like it's discrediting the fact that we believe in God because we're going to a counselor. Because you believe in God is why you should go. Keep yourself healthy. Keep your mind healthy. He wants you to share the gospel. And if you're locked up in your bedroom, sleeping for weeks, not talking to anybody, limiting your life, how are you going to do what he's called you to be? So just, and I think that's the biggest point that I want to carry is, it's okay. Talk to someone. Talk to someone who would understand. Talk to someone who's not going to judge you, and who's not going to make you feel bad about yourself. If you don't want to talk to your friend because you don't want to burden them, then go talk to someone who is not burdened by it, and that's their life goal. That's their profession. Because people, they want to talk about it. It's just, who do we want to talk to?
Right.
And just taking that stigma off of it, and just relying on, hey, pray about who you could go to. Maybe the Lord will show you who to go to. So I just think it's just, doesn't have to be one or the other, and never had to be. And you can be healed from it. You can get to a healing ground. You can feel peace again in your situation. It's just trusting one in God, and trusting in yourself, to just be open to going and talking and just seeing where it goes. And it doesn't mean you have to go for the rest of your life either. I think that's another thing. It's like, well, if I go, I'm going to be stuck with, like, no, go until you feel comfortable that you have now gotten the coping skills you need. You've gotten accountability around you. We preach accountability in so many other things. Why can't we preach accountability in mental health? Why can't we have that there? And your accountability partner can be a counselor. So it's like, if we got to stick to what we know, and that is talking, that is, doing things and acting on things. Like you said, we need that practical thing to it. It's a two-hand thing, especially with mental health, where it's just going to continue to be that cycle. If you don't feel it, the cycle's just going to keep going. And that's where I was in a cycle, because I still thought there's only one way out of this. And, I needed people. I needed people who would listen. And I use peer support myself. So.
So when we talk about that, is there ever a time where, or was there, or even is there now present, where you were like, well, God, why? Like, if you love me, why would you let this happen? Or that you were like, well, I'm not living for you because you took my dad. Like, where you're just really grappling with it. This is this loving God. Why would he allow me to suffer?
I definitely was just like, why a person that has touched so many people? Like, that was my rock. That was my pillar. Like, well, like, I don't think I ever got to a place where it was like, I'm not living for you, but I got to a place where I constantly was talking on either side, like, in the world, in the church, in the world. I never left the church, but I definitely was a whole lot in the world for a really long time. Because I knew, well, I don't want to leave, because he's there, he's been there for me, he's held me down. Ooh, but I like this other stuff, like that side of the grass looks green too. So I was just really confused and hurting, and was like, well, there's so many better outlets. I mean, nothing else I feel like would work. And it would be like, I would not understand. I never figured out who I was in him, and within just me, and understanding what's my purpose. And that was my purpose. It was, to go through that storm, was to go through that. And I think once I finally understood that that was my why, it made it okay. And I didn't find out that was my why until like I'm 23. So like recently, like really feeling like comfortable in that. And I would say probably like 2016 when I went on my mission trip, that's really where it felt like that's why I had to go through it. And it's not that he doesn't love me, he's not any less loving, but he knew for her to fulfill her purpose, this is what's got to happen. And it sucked. But I know more than ever that I'm walking in a path that my dad would have supported. Because that's who he was. Like, he wasn't licensed, but I'm telling you, like, my dad should have been a therapist or a counselor, because just the amount of, lives, that church was filled. Like, CLC was packed out. People from all over were coming. So after getting through that why me, God situation and getting through that portion, and just, I felt a void of love because that's where I got a lot of it from. This is daddy's girl all the way, and I don't deny it. So understanding, like, why did you take my source of love away? It was because I didn't realize that he was my main source. I had relied on someone for so long that it was like, it's time to rely on me. So it definitely was just kind of like a, why is this happening to me? Like, why did you choose me to do it? Like, why? But just understanding, it revealed so much more after that. And it wasn't the next day, it wasn't the next year, it wasn't even 2 years after that. It came years down the road. And everyone's different, like I said. But it definitely it shook my world. It definitely took me to a place I didn't think I'd ever go to. Brought me through things I didn't think I would ever have to deal with, but I don't regret them. Do I wish things could have, given me a little bit more time before? I even struggled when other people's family members would pass away from like cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Why couldn't that happen to me? Why couldn't I have the chance to say, bye? Why couldn't I had? So even in my adult years, I struggled with that, understanding like, it was more of a frustration, and I think that's where a lot of my depression built up from, was a frustration of seeing other kids with their families, or people having the choice because they have this terminal illness to take their lives and be assisted. So it was like, those things frustrated me. Like, I didn't get that chance. I wanted that. Why didn't I get that? So I think that's more so where my whys came from. It wasn't so much of a well, don't you love me kind of thing. It was more so like, how come I didn't get that little extra time? But I think about now, I have a nephew, and he knows who his grandpa is. Never met him in his life, but he sees a picture, he knows who that is. So I don't think about it as, why was he taken? But I got that time to learn from him, and I grew. I shot up from there, and I'm still growing. I fall and I grow. I go. It's life, I climb my mountains, and sometimes I fall into a valley, but I get back up again. So I just think that it's not. I don't focus on the why he's gone anymore, and I've definitely grown to just know that it was needed for me to be prepared and equipped. I'll never forget last year, that's what God told me. I gotta break you to equip you. So I think coming to that understanding helped me a lot better.
That's a word. Like, wow, that I'm just gonna try not to cry. That's powerful.
So I think that, once I got through that spot, I had to be broken to get equipped for what he's gonna do. And it's not just a career, it's my life, it's what I love to do. I'm never going to be ashamed of talking about it, and just letting mental health know that, I like to say, we've served your notice. Like, we're coming in to help people get better,
Yes.
not stay the way they are.
I'm gonna
So
title that we served your notice. I love it. I'm like literally stopping to write this down. That is like, for real, because I think that we have to take that stance. Like, and when we're proactive, particularly as a result of our mental health and our mental wellness, that a lot of things that happen, we're able to like really mitigate or decrease the amount of damage. So I'm looking at the calendar and it's 10 years in October.
mm-hmm.
Like, that's a big anniversary. How are you preparing yourself? So it's easy to say, like Father's Day just passed last month, you got through that, great, fine, no problem. But now it's about to be like 10 years. That's like a very monumental, like, that's monumental when you think about loss. When those anniversaries come and they're like the really like the 5 year, the 1 year, 5 year, the 10 year, those are the ones where you're just kind of like, hold on to my seat, what's going to go on? So what are you doing now to prepare yourself? Like, what is your plan outside of your rap when you're like, hey, I know these things trigger me, this gets me to like a gray, a gray area, a dark area, maybe even like a blackish, like gloomy, doomy, like Eeyore-ish area. What are you doing now to prepare? So like, we can pray and fast and all that jazz, and that it all has its place and it all has its time. Are you taking time off of work? Do you have like a self-care plan in place? Like, what are you doing as that approaches?
That's a really good question. And if I think about it honestly, I'm sitting here thinking, what am I doing? I don't know. I think I don't think when it comes to these anniversaries that like my family is ever really together. So I'd like to see us come together, whether it's like I take a mental health day or something like that. And um, I don't even know the last time I went to the gravesite, just because these last few years have been a battle. So it's been difficult, um, just going through highs and lows. So I think preparing a day that is just celebratory. I don't want to think about the last moment I had. I want to think about the good times. Like, um, I love watching our family home videos. Those are always awesome. Um, I blame him for my love for photography because he always had a camera in his hand. So just, not making it think about the loss is probably the best way that I can handle it, or explain like how I'm going to handle that. And just looking at it as something different, not so much. And that's not to forget that it happened, but I may have lost someone, but I know that he gained so much more. And I don't want that day to be filled, if at all possible, with sadness. I want that to be a day where we're rejoicing, or we're like, I don't know how many people are watching this that or will watch this who were even at the funeral, but I don't know how many people actually know we shouted out of my dad's funeral to his favorite song. And it wasn't sadness. Like, I want to feel that again. I want to feel that, like, yeah, I started off super sad. I started off singing a song and barely made it through it. But I don't want it to be a day where I allow depression to rule it. I want it to be a day where, for once, I think last year was like the first time where I didn't cry. And it wasn't a sad cry. Like, I enjoyed myself. Like, it was a good day. Like, I want that again, because I don't want that. I don't want to feel like I have, and not to say that you can't be sad. Like, wow, she sounds crazy because she lost her dad and she's not. No, but I also know my dad. Like, my dad wouldn't want me to spend a day locked in the dark room. He'd want me to be doing something beneficial, whether it's for myself or for someone else. So I think I'm going to surround myself with people, and just remember, it doesn't have to be as dark as it was. I don't want to go back to that place, so I'm not going to allow a date to depict how I'm gonna and what I'm gonna do with it. So that's probably like a super long-winded answer to that question, because I haven't really thought about it. So as I'm talking to you, I'm thinking about like, what am I gonna do to prepare myself for that?
Yeah,
So
and I say that because people assume like when you get so many years post a traumatic event that you have it like together. And I ask like off the cuff questions because people assume, and they like, because maybe you're in therapy now, maybe you're not in therapy now, maybe you're in therapy for 10 years, maybe you're in therapy for 6 months, whatever that looks like. Your story is not everyone else's story, but people will assume, oh, well, she's like, almost 10 years out of this, like she's working to be a therapist herself, like this is her goal, like she's got a monopoly on like the healing solution. She's got a rap plan, she's got social support. I don't have all of these things. So when I ask a question about what's your plan, moving forward, 3 months out, a little less than 3 months now, you're like, I haven't thought about that. So like, don't assume because people are professionals, like, and now you're working in this, you're gaining knowledge and expertise of how to navigate through emotions, that life does not still happen for you. That even though you've been resilient over your personal struggle of grief and loss and mental health and bridging that gap in the church for you personally, and eating disorders and all these other things that accompany this one particular event that had like a long and outstanding ripple, that you have it all together. And I have it all together as a therapist, like really being able to say, hey, like, yeah, even in pursuit of my education and now like getting all this stuff in order, like I really haven't thought about that. Oh my gosh, it is going to be 10 years. What will that feel like? Should I feel guilty for not going graveside? Like, in my culture, I'm Haitian, so like we used to do like all of like these very extended like grief and loss things. We wear black for 6 months. We go to the funeral. I don't go graveside no more. Like after I bury you, I'm not coming back to the grave. Like that for me is just so triggering. It's so traumatic. I want no parts of that. Like I already know you're dead and gone. I'm not coming back. I'm not doing these like candlelight vigils every year. Like that doesn't work for me. Other people do that way. Like my family will do like candlelight vigil every time, like every anniversary for everything. They'll wear black. They'll do all of these like big services. Jessica's not coming because that stuff is triggering to me. I remember going to sit there and like sit in that same service and see a body up there. Like I'm not here for that. Like I can't. And knowing your boundaries. So maybe like graveside for you at one point was very comforting and it really worked. And now it may be triggering or just may not be beneficial to go because that's not really celebrating his life. So identifying what your healing looks like and what your wrap looks like and what your looks like and what your triggers are and who your support is and who your support is not. Because not everybody in the church was like, great job, go see a therapist, or like, oh, this is so sad you've got this eating disorder now. They're just kind of like, well, like figure it out. And we want to be able to say, the church is not bad for that. And therapists are not bad for what they do. And maybe you need, your pastor and a therapist, or you need to like really just go down and sit and go somewhere like and be impatient for a while and like really work on you being well. That looks like, but there's no one way. The only bad thing you can do is not get help.
Absolutely. I think that's the truth.
Is not get help. Whether you like your therapist today or you can't stand them tomorrow, like people come in my office and they don't like me sometimes. I'm like, look, I'm not here to be your friend. I'm here to walk with you through this journey of healing, whatever that looks like for you. And I can't just let you sit on my couch at the rates that I charge and just, or even if it was free, and just sit there and be broken because you want to sit in your brokenness, maybe for a session or two, but we're not gonna sit down for 3-4 sessions. You just sit down. I'm not getting out of bed. I have to be able to help you, give you the tools to say, try this, do this. If you don't like it, throw it out. Like I've got clients who are like, I hated this whole thing, like, and I'm not using it ever again. Cool, no problem. But even having the resources to say, I'm going to get help. Super duper duper important. If you want somebody to take one thing away from your episode, outside of like the coping skills and the trauma, like what would you tell maybe your younger self, or somebody who's going through a very recent loss, whether that's a loss of employment, a loss of a loved one, a loss of identity, a loss of, maybe they backslid and they're like, I can never go to my church, and there's a new label or stigma associated with them. What would you tell them would be the first step to getting their healing? And what would you say, this is like, do this?
I think the first thing I would say is look past the shame. That is what keeps us from going to get help. That is beyond the big stigma word, beyond those big SAT words that we like to use, these big mental health words. Get past the shame. And it just, holding on to that shame is what's going to keep you from getting help, because you're so ashamed of what you're going through. You're so ashamed to go get help. You're so ashamed to talk to your pastor about it. All of those things, that's the first thing you're going to say. Get past the disappointment. They're going to be so much more happy that you're here on this earth living than if you weren't. So get past what you think they're going to say and think about what you want them to say. I think if you put that flip in your mind of, here's what I want my mom to say, or when I go to my pastor to talk about seeing a counselor, or what he thinks would, like when you go to seek that spiritual guidance, what are they going to say? When you go to your husband to ask, to tell what's going on. I want him to respond like this. If you think with that reciprocal, with that mindset, that you're going to go. I think if I thought of it like that, like, what do I want to get out of it? What do I want to change? I think I would think my cycle would have been shorter. I don't think I would have let it kept going on and on because I had no goal. I wanted enough to get me through the week or get me through the month.
Or through the day.
Or through the day, through that second. But if you think about, what do I want to get out of it? Forget about the shame. Forget about the eyes. And I know that is super hard, but that's the one thing I want whoever watches this to get through that point, because that's what's going to keep you bound and never get help, is because you're ashamed and you don't want that disappointment and you're afraid of what they're going to say. And fear in general no longer has to be a factor of what you're going through. So I think just, taking those three things away, no matter the disappointment, no matter the whatever, taking away the shame, and just the fear, and just go. Just talk. Start with someone close to you first and branch out from there. But I think that's one thing that I would have said to my younger self of, just get out of your head. And that's really what that is. I was stuck so far up here that I wasn't thinking about anything else. And it's a very blurry line.
Definitely.
So I think that's what I would say.
Did you say that I'm like in the middle right now because we're in Minority Mental Health Awareness Month, and this week my thing's taking the out of shame, like really opening up and talking about things that we try to hide behind. So it's just, God is so faithful. He's just so amazing, and just
he's awesome.
It's just like, I was like, she's just gonna take my whole little message for the week, huh? But that's really, really, really good. If somebody wanted to find you, maybe to follow you on social media, to get a hold of you, to ask you questions, to find out about your peer support journey and what's been working for you, and maybe ask questions, how do they reach you?
You can find me on Facebook at Kadesha Mitchell. That's the only social media I have right now. And yeah, you can message me. I'm always open. Yeah, the only other thing I have is my photography page. But yeah, so yeah, on Facebook, Kadesha Mitchell.
Is that like one of your coping skills, that you just take pictures of people?
Yes, I love photography. It not only has to become like a personal hobby, like it's my ministry. Like I'm social media coordinator at my church. I take pictures of our district. I'm on an awesome team. I have an awesome team both in church and within the district. So it's something that a friend of mine asked me to take pictures at. Her mom asked me to take pictures at her wedding behind the photographer, and like it went from there. And I did it once at a youth event before I really got into it. And I think it was Rachel Keats gave me a camera and was like, just go take pictures. And I was like, okay. And I went, and then it's bloomed from there. So it's definitely a huge coping skill. I love doing it. It's something that if you see me at a youth event or a church event without a camera, I'm either sick or something's wrong. So if I don't have it with me, something's up.
Well, Kadesha, thank you so very much for joining me today. I truly, 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 truly appreciate it. I'm sure this will definitely bless somebody, whether they're in church or not in church, to just really be aware of the human aspect of struggling and loss. So I just thank you a million times over. All right, guys, we'll see you next week. Of course.